Hello, Dio. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
I'm very good. I'm very good. And whereabouts? Am I right in saying that you're in Canada at the moment? Is that right?
I am. I am in Canada. I'm shooting a show, and I've been told by the show you can't tell people you're shooting the show because it's one of those ones where something happened with my character previously, and so they want the audience still waiting to see what's going to happen. So I can't tell you what show I'm shooting out here, but yeah, definitely in Toronto shooting a show.
I don't know.
Yeah,
News for everybody. That's good. So
yeah,
now I watched Emperor with Tina, my
right
partner,
on.
the other night. We both loved it. Great film, great story. You're superb in it.
Thank
It,
you.
it did something because I'll hold my hand up. I wasn't aware of Shield's Green and the full story through watching Emperor, and this is a sign of a good film. It took me down a rabbit hole online, reading more about him, which is
Right.
and it's the sign of a film hooking you in and wanting to know more about it.
Yeah.
Um, Before we get onto that, because there's a lot that I want to talk to you about it as well. A little bit about you, because I was reading some of your history, and
Hmm.
I'd say about 10 years ago, I moved from England into Wales, which, considering
Okay.
I've moved from just one side of the border to the other, meant a journey of about 40 miles at most. You and your family moved from Nigeria to America. I
That's
mean,
right.
what on earth was that like for you when all that happened?
It's so funny. People always say, oh my gosh, it must have been the biggest culture shock, and you must have. No, it wasn't.
Wasn't
I
it?
grew up watching so much television, which is funny because I feel like in Nigeria we got the best of both worlds. We got the best of like British television, with whether it was Faulty Towers or
Well,
whatever the case may be, and then we also grew up watching Fresh Prince of Bel Air and The Cosby Show and whatever the case may be. So it's so the American dream is America's best export. It is, you know what I mean? It so seeps into the cultures of a lot of other countries. So, initially my parents had gone to college in the States when they were a lot younger and then had moved back to Nigeria. So when it was time for my siblings and I to go to school, we just wanted to go to the same school our parents went to because they spoke very highly about the college they went to, Anderson University, and they had pictures. And my dad played basketball, and he was my hero growing up. So I just wanted to do exactly what he did, and so yeah, eventually immigrated to the United States, really academically to go to school,
mhm.
and then the rest of my family after college they all moved back to Nigeria. But I'm the prodigal son who wanted to become an actor, and which was a different conversation with my folks at that point. But so I was the one who stayed behind after school and all that to pursue acting, and luckily I think it's working out. But
Okay.
yeah, that's how we kind of ended up in the States. Yeah.
You got a bachelor's degree, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Got a bachelor's degree in visual communications design and business. I was going in a different life. Like, here's the thing. I told my folks I wanted to be an actor, and they were like, "Oh, that's cool, but you're getting a degree. Get a degree in something. We don't care what it is. Just get a degree in something that can get you a real job, and then then you can go work on the acting thing. So if that doesn't work out, you have something to fall back on. So, and I thought, that made sense to me as a kid. I never pushed back against that. I was like, that's great advice from parents, and yeah, it kind of worked out. I'm yet to use my design degree. I got a job at Apple years ago before I landed the Hunger Games, and when I got the Hunger Games, I had to tell them that I couldn't take this job at Apple, but I couldn't tell them it was for the Hunger Games because the press hadn't dropped yet.
Wow.
And I remember the chick, the lady chick, the lady who hired me, she was like, "You got to offer somewhere else other than Apple." I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Where?" And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you where." She's like, "Do you know it's harder to get into Stanford than it is to work at Apple? You know that, right?" I was like, "I'm sorry, I just can't tell you. I just can't tell you." So she was so angry with me at the time. Hopefully she saw Hunger Games and she understood eventually why I didn't take the job. But yeah, that's kind of my immigration story in a very quick, abridged nutshell.
I mean, that was a really big decision right there. I mean,
Yes, massive.
I presume is quite a safe job, and you could have carried on in that way. To take
Yep.
that leap, I know, fair play. It is the Hunger Games as well. A big with the Bucks, and it's going to do well. But
Yeah.
that really big decision. Was there
Yeah.
any hesitancy at all when that was put to you, or were you just 100%? That's
No, I always quote the Lord of the Rings. You have to have a fool's hope. going to LA is like going to Mordor. You just have to have a fool's hope, and you have to be prepared, but also have a very healthy amount of ignorance, because if you start to look at the numbers and the probability of making it in this industry, it's staggeringly against you. And I just didn't care. I just didn't look at any of that stuff. I'm still passionate about acting to the day and storytelling. And as I was back then, you know, it's just funny that it's in after things started to somewhat work out for me that I started to do the research. And I'm like, whoa, like it was a very ill-advised decision to pursue acting. But it's one of those things, you're happy to be on the other end of the pond and looking back and going, wow, I'm happy I was brave enough to make that choice. But it happened. The amount of luck as well that goes into that as well it's just staggering. So I just feel blessed even talking to you about a movie that I'm the lead in. It still blows my mind. Still blows my mind.
That's great. I mean, I guess that's a good feeling to hold on to, you know, through your career as well, because it would be an easy thing. I would have thought, you know, if stardom suddenly comes and all the attention, it would be easy to lose track of how everything begins and who you are as well as a person.
Oh yeah. But it also took some time. You know, I mean, I've been doing this now. This would be 10 years since 9 years since the Hunger Games. So it wasn't just like from Hunger Games to a starring role. Like it was a building process, a domino effect. But my agents and my managers and we always had this idea, okay, we'll give it in 10 years, we want to be in a certain place. And so, yeah, it seems like it's working out, you know? So shout out to my parents for not completely beating the idea down, but laying a pathway to it for sure.
Parents, definitely good parents right there.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Would you say
they really are.
When I looked at the release date for it, I couldn't believe it was 9 years ago. I would never have guessed it was that long ago.
I know. It's pretty insane.
And like you said, you've a lot has happened to you in that time. And just one thing before we get on to Emperor that I want to pick up on, because you're in the Terminator universe. You're Danny Dyson.
Yeah.
How did that come about? That must have been a thrill as well, because
it absolutely was. You know, I'll tell you a very funny story about the whole Terminator thing. It was very, very peculiar. I had read for Star Wars, the Star Wars movie, and I had been pinned for that. I remember I was getting ready to fly to fly to London to do some more tests for that with J.J. Abrams and all those folks. And that project was so hot. Star Wars was so hot that if you were in any capacity being considered for a role in that, every other studio wanted you for their movie, because they just felt like, you know, these are the blue chip stock actors right now. And so based off of the rumor that I was going to screen test for Star Wars, I had a meeting at Skydance with the producers over there, Dana Goldberg and some other people, and they pitched me Terminator, and I made myself a little audition tape, and they hired me right away. They were like, yeah, you know, and then of course Star Wars ended up not happening, but I do have to thank Star Wars because I think they forced Skydance hand in some capacity. But yeah, that's kind of how that happened. But it was also such an amazing, I mean, I loved the Terminator movies growing up. I remember seeing Terminator 2, and, you know, I mean, Dyson had such a indelible impact on me. You know, the fact that he was an African-American, but in that story, he was playing the genius. He's the one who created the technology that eventually creates Skynet and the machines. I mean, it was so ahead of its time. I feel like sometimes people don't give James Cameron a lot of credit. I mean, he had Linda Hamilton be, not just Linda Hamilton, even going back to, well, I guess that would be Ridley Scott with Aliens, but he picked up the Aliens franchise, but like a strong female lead in a science fiction series and a Black scientist that is the genius behind the machines. I mean, we didn't see figures like that growing up. You know, it was so cool. So to be able to receive the baton of that story in any way was so massive. And I loved Arnold growing up. Oh my God. I was a beyond a fanatic growing up. So getting the chance to make that movie. I know my parents, my dad specifically, because he knew my obsession with Arnold Schwarzenegger growing up, and being in the movie with Arnold was just like some wild kid's fantasy coming true. It was so crazy, you know. Yeah, I look back on that so fondly. That was such a great experience, you know, being in that movie and getting to play, you know, this young tech CEO. You know, it's just one of those roles that never comes along. He just, you know, just doesn't, especially for actors of color. So it was amazing for
Oh,
sure.
what a great story. And I'd
Yeah.
like to know with your preparation as an actor, so with Danny Dyson, fictional
Yeah.
character, is there any difference when you're prepping for a character like that to with Shields Green in Emperor when it's a historical figure, it's a real person?
Right. Not really, honestly. For me, the process is quite the same. I always start with, because it's me, right? Every character you play is a part of you. It's your tool. Your body is your tool, your heart, your voice, that's your tool. So I always start from an instinctual place. I always start from the inside with how this thing feels when it's coming. When I read the script, I'm already talking. I'm already saying it out loud. I want to see how it sounds like coming out of my mouth. I always start from that place. Um, and and then I work my way outwardly. So I start from the heart of the character. What does the character want deeply? What is he looking for? And the only difference between Danny Dyson and with Shields Green is then I go and reaffirm if what I'm feeling from within
Mhm.
matches externally what this real life person was like, you know. So you know, I then would go read Frederick Douglass's book where he talks about Shields Green, which is one of the very few accounts there is of Shields Green out there at all, you know. And but it paints a very clear picture of him very quickly in Frederick Douglass's book. You know, he talks about him as being, you know, a single-minded, not single-minded, but a determined-minded individual. You know, he spoke very deliberately in a broken-up cadence. You know, he was a man of resilience. You know, people called him Emperor. It was his nickname. Was this from some association with royalty from his African roots, or was it just something they called him because of the way he carried himself?
Yeah.
When you hear that, it just paints a picture immediately. So now I'm trying to match that with what I'm trying to create from within, you know. And another thing is, Shields is also, there's just very little information. There are fragments of information about him out there. So a lot of the research that I would now do externally were just on, you know, what the daily life of a slave was like. You know, what are those accounts, and what kind of psychological effects would that have on an individual? You know, so I studied, you know, trauma in children, you know, child abuse specifically. And, you know, Mark Ammon, the director, and we worked on Shields changing over the course of the movie. So in the beginning of the film, you know, he doesn't maintain a lot of eye contact with his overlords. You know, his head is always down. Lack of eye contact is a character trait very widely shared amongst, you know, children of child abuse. And he would have been born into slavery, so you would want that to carry on. And then the whole thing of his speech pattern, how he spoke very deliberately, and how that cadence really came from, he probably had a stutter as a child. You know, that's another trait from child abuse, is a stutter. And so in trying to work on his stutter, he would just try to slow down what he was trying to say. So you reverse engineer some of those things to try to come to build a character that feels authentic in some form of fashion. But then again, he's called Emperor. You know, he was known as Emperor on his plantation. So how does abuse translate into somebody who's very certain or sure of themselves? And it's playing against his trauma. A lot of the things of why he's looks so confident to other people is not because, you know, I always tell my niece this, and I think I read it, I probably stole it from somewhere, but it's the idea of courage is not the absence of fear. You know, courage is doing what you need to do in spite of the fear that you feel. And other people around you might just go, oh my gosh, he's the bravest person. You know, he's so courageous. You know, he doesn't feel fear. No, it's quite the contrary. So we wanted to play Shields that way. You know, he's not stoic for stoic's sake. He's stoic because he has no other choice but to be stoic. And so we were very, very cautious about not making him a superhero, and when he's in fear, he's in fear. And the first night he spends alone in the woods, he weeps. He completely breaks down when the realization of my wife is gone. I might never see my son again. He crumbles. I was like, I don't want him to just be this, macho Superman type of a guy. He's not. He was an everyday person like you and me. He just was able to face his fears head on. So yeah, these are the ways I build characters. It just has to come from a logical place, and then you go and look at the history pages and you make adjustments to the things that you were right about or the things that you were wrong about. And just go from there.
I think with you saying as well that he wasn't, you don't portray him as being this Superman, and he has got vulnerability. He's also really strong as well. He's got both the sides to him, and you train him like that. It really draws you in more as a viewer. You really have a lot of empathy for him. And this, the film takes you through all the emotions. It really does drag you through all the emotions. For you, playing some of these parts. I mean, we were watching some of the scenes, and you're going, "Oh my God, that's so bad."
I remember, reading the script and going, okay, I got to get my cardio up because he's running from page 1 to page 100. And so, okay. Went in the gym and started running 5 miles every day because we're going to be in Savannah, Georgia, which is known for having notoriously hot and humid summers. So I just knew my cardio, my endurance has to be up to make this film. So definitely had that. He's riding a horse. I'd never ridden a horse before. So the production company, set me up with this lady up in New Jersey and, I started riding 3 times a week, four times a week, for about 2 months before I started filming. So learned how to ride a horse. Oh, there's a scene where he has to have a snake crawl over him. I have the biggest phobia for snakes on the planet. So I was like, I have to get over this phobia. So I started meditating and started doing some kind of talk therapy because I have to shoot this scene with the snake and I don't want to pass out. And I'm not going to use the fake snake because, when award season comes along, they're going to give it to the guy who used the real snake. So, it was just a comment. I mean, there was so much in this film that as an actor, you want those challenges. Honestly, you really do want those challenges. You want to be pushed and you want to know how far you can go. And then I'm also happy that a role like this came to me at this point in my life because when we shot this film, I had just turned 30. I turned 30 while we were making the film. And I just felt like I was a richer individual. I just felt like I had gone through a lot in my life and a lot to pull from, and so for a lot of those scenes, there was somewhere to go inwardly to find that level of despair, to find that level of trauma, and then just really trying to read everything under the sun about that era, about, what the daily life of slaves was like. And, it's one of the other things that comes to mind, especially when you're playing this duality of tortured yet strong and stoic is the idea that desperation is the mother of invention, and even the human will is so hard to destroy or so hard to break down that as dire as the circumstances that enslaved people were going through, they found ways to bring beauty into their life. They actually cared about their appearance. They cared about their hair. They cared about their skin. There's a lot of accounts of them using, pig fat to moisturize their skin or to braid their hair, or how they would, using their metalworking skills to make little pieces of jewelry for themselves. And I was like, ooh, you latch onto things like that in the research, because if this is a guy who was known as emperor, he would be slightly different from the people around him, the other enslaved people. And out of that came the idea of the bracelet that my wife wears in the story. I remember Notori Norton, who plays my wife, she had suggested that, she should have some kind of a bracelet or something. And a lot of the production was like, no, well, where would she get that? Like, they don't have any money. They don't care about their appearance. They're stripped away from everything. But it's like, no, when you have everything taken from you, you make things for yourself. They were actually pretty colorful with the way they, you know, would use flowers to dye their clothing, or use ox blood to dye, literal ox blood to dye their clothing, you know, and that kind of invention that can only come from desperation. And then the idea of that bracelet being something that Shields made for his wife, I thought that was, you know, brilliant. And it showed resilience even in the most vulnerable of places, you know. So you just stretch and try to find these things that color the character real and interesting ways, you know. So yeah, you're constantly fighting that duality, you know. I don't want him to be a superhero, but you do have to somewhat be a superhuman to make decisions like that, to take agency of your life in a time like that, you know. So it's rather complex.
It is, yeah. I mean, what a strong man he was.
Yes.
And again,
yes, he was.
You know, as I said at the beginning, to watch this film and then go online and do a deep dive and to read a lot more about him is enlightening. More people should do that, and I'm sure they will after watching the film as well.
Yep.
What was it like for you the first time that you watched it? You know, you sat there and the finished edited version.
Oh man, it was well. The very first version I watched, there's no music in there. It's an absolute rough cut. It's not color timed. You've got Mark doing my ADR, because I haven't even done like some of the additional dialogue in there. So there are weird scenes where like it goes from my voice to like Mark's voice, like doing some dialogue that he wants me to come in and replace. So, you know, every time, the very first time I watch a movie, I'm really just watching it for technical reasons. You know, you're just watching it. Is it tracking? Is the story moving? You know, and you know, oh man, I got a double chin in that one scene. Oh, I don't really like, you know, like the really stupid stuff. But the very first time I saw it all completed and put together was in LA. We had a very small premiere. This was after COVID, obviously, which really sucked. You know, we really wanted the movie to have a theatrical release. But when I saw it all put together with the music and everything, I was just blown away about our makeup department, our hair department, the clothing department. You know, it takes a village to make these movies. And I was just so proud of everyone that came together to try to make this thing the greatest thing it could possibly be. You know, we're an independent movie. You know, we didn't have a big studio backing. And I just really felt like everyone brought their A game. You know what I mean? And so the very first time I saw it, I just had this sense of just pride in my heart that, you know, everyone kind of just came together and gave their best work to make this, you know, Mark's passion project, really. You know, and yeah, and I just was like, I can't wait for my nieces to see this. You know, I can't wait for my nephew to see this. I can't wait for people in my family to see this, not specifically because of me, but specifically because of what it says about what it means to be a human. And then it also, you know, we shot this movie in 2018. Even though it didn't come out till 2020. So, and then when it came out was when America was just going through it, you know, over that summer, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement. So when the movie did come out, it came out right at the perfect time, you know, to just talk about resilience and to just talk about, no, now is the time for change. We've been going through this stuff in America for so many years, and it just was ready. It was ready to hit the national stage. And yeah. So
yeah, I'm glad it did. And like I said, I just encourage everybody to watch it. I'll be I did the written review on the website. I'll put the link to that in the show notes for this. Just go and watch. And I'm sure over the next 10 years, I look forward to watching more that you do. Love to have you back on the show as well, Dayo, at some point, and chat about some more of your projects.
Absolutely.
For the sake of the edit, thank you so much for joining me today, and continued success.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.